The president of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, rejected the intervention in statements made by U.S. officials. In Palestine, humanitarian emergency worsened as hours tick by. Nearly 2 million people in the enclave reduced their food consumption to 1 meal a day and drink polluted water. Grenadans celebrate the commemorative events on the first National Day of the Heroes in memory of the 1983 assassination of former Prime Minister Maurice Bishop, several of his cabinet colleagues and civilians. Hello, welcome to From the South. Tamara Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll begin with the news. Stay with us. The President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, rejected the interventionist statements made by the U.S. officials. The statements were offered by Rodriguez on behalf of the Board of Directors of the National Assembly and the Commission for Dialogue in order to categorically reject the statements by the U.S. official who warns that the partial lifting of the unilateral coercive measures towards Venezuela is not definitive, since the non-compliance with the terms of this agreement will lead to the U.S. to go back on steps that have been taken. In his opinion, Rodriguez points out that the White House document is unacceptable, it is false, and categorically does not correspond to reality. The President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, referred on Thursday to the relevance of the announcement made by the U.S. Treasury Department to grant a broad license for the production, marketing, exploration, and sale of Venezuelan oil, and once again rejected the intromission of the third countries in the internal affairs of the country.
Categorically, because of its lies, because of being because of interfering. The Secretary of State and Anthony Blinken and Mr. Guaido, what they pointed out, it's clearly they are ignoring the Constitution and laws of Venezuela. At this point, they must know that the government of Venezuela doesn't accept pressures of any country or any organization whatsoever. We don't accept, we will never accept any kind of interference in our own business.
Jorge Rodriguez also points out the importance of the lifting of the sanctions against the Venezuelan economy and highlighted the legitimacy of the electoral process in Venezuela.
We accept the participation of observers or of international observers. We are proud of President of Venezuela's.
The good relations between Colombia and Venezuela continue to progress. They have recently reached an agreement to fight food and mouth disease. The meeting held in the Colombian city of Cúcuta on the border with Venezuela brought together representatives of the Colombian Agricultural Institute and the National Institute of Integral Agricultural Health of Venezuela, along with representatives of the Pan American Center for Food and Mouth Disease. They agreed to strengthen their programs for the fight against avian influenza and sniff fever. Among other things, they stepped up a technical working committee for the border area areas and establish the mechanisms to maintain the exchange of information to improve sanitary control. The Commission of Justice and Human Rights of the Peruvian Congress approved on Wednesday a report that proposes the dismissal of the 7 members of the National Board of Justice, the highest control organisms of the Peruvian judiciary. The Congress said in a press release that the decision was taken with 15 votes in favor, 3 against, and 2 abstentions, and that now that the report must be drafted and sent to the plenary for debate and voting. The report recommends the removal of the members of the National Justice Board, a fact that some sectors qualified as a parliamentary coup. On Wednesday in Mexico, the Commission for Truth and Access to Justice of the Ayotzinapa case of the Ministry of Interior affirmed that the Army followed up in real time everything that happened to the 43 normalistas on September 26, 2014. Alejandro Encinas Rodriguez, current Undersecretary of Human Rights, Population and Migration, published a series of documents of military espionage related to the military's pursuit of the criminal network in Iguala when the 43 students from Isidro Burgos could support. The 18 documents showed a number of people the Army intercepted and also contain text about transferred students and will support a theory that the Army was aware of the kidnapping and disappearance of the 43 students. The president of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, announced on Wednesday that China has expanded the use of currency trading known as swap, reach $6.5 billion. The head of state expressed that his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping ratified that this is a bilateral meeting held at the Grand Palace of Beijing. Fernandez emphasized that such a decision facilitates Argentina's ongoing production and labor and serves to preserve resources and strengthen Argentina's reserves, while the government cracked down on those who speculate and try to suffocate the nation with metaverse and irresponsible statements. The Argentine researchers are making history in responding to those who have locked down on scientific progress with approval of the first vaccine entirely developed in the country to combat COVID-19. The RVAC Cecilia Grayson vaccine is now ready and approved for use by the Administration of Drug, Food and Technology. In a public-private alliance that brought together more than 600 scientists from institutions such as the National University of San Martin, the National Science Council of the Casara Laboratory, almost 1 million doses have been produced and will be available in a short time. The Minister of Science and Technology, Daniel Filmus, emphasized that it is only the beginning of the development of another vaccine.
As we said, it's a historical feat. It is the first country of the region. It is one of the few nations, less than 10 countries worldwide have reached a feat of this nature. It has been over 2 years of restless work, and Argentina is going to have its own vaccine platform which will serve to develop other vaccines. It is the first time that Argentina can conduct clinical studies from the first to the third phase in the country with our own provisions. Thus, this is a paramount accomplishment which will allow Argentinians to get vaccinated in due time, and it will allow substituting import and making export to other regional nations, process which we already started.
Let's take a very first break, but remember you can now join us on our TikTok account at teleSUR English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. The Niger continues to drop bombs on the Palestinian civilian settlements, killing more than 15 Palestinians on Thursday and forcing at least 1 million residents to flee their homes. Early on Thursday, the Israeli occupation forces bombed Rafah, Sarad, and Khan Yunis, causing at least 15 deaths. The epidemiological account of the violence is getting more difficult as the number is increasing by the hours. The first briefing provided by the Gaza Ministry of Health on Thursday registered 3,547 deaths and 13,365 wounded. Humanitarian organizations also denounced the forced displacements of more than 1 million residents. The humanitarian emergency in Gaza worsened as the hour ticked by. Nearly 2 million people in the enclave reduced their food consumption to 1 meal a day and drink polluted water. With no electricity in the homes, the people of Gaza survive. Those in little food they still have left. Of energy and supplies force millions to drink polluted water. Humanitarian organizations announced that hospitals are on the edge of collapse in addition to the crisis already affecting them due to the blockade imposed by Tel Aviv. There are 13 days of siege and more than 12,000 wounded. And in Gaza, our correspondent brings us testimonies after a large number of deaths and injuries have been reported in recent hours following the recent Israeli airstrike on hospitals where a large number of civilians, including children and elderly people, were seeking refuge.
We came to this hospital because we were told to evacuate our homes. We arrived at the Baptist hospital with some young friends from Deir al-Sawari. The young people sat there to listen to the news and asked me to bring them coffee. During that moment, when I went to get the coffee and came back, I heard the explosion. In this very spot, I took a look at the place and saw how the scarlets were flying around, and the young people and also many children. And there were 2 girls from Al Zaytun. My reliance is only on God. It was actually a missile launch in this area. It is an area that houses a large number of displaced people who left their homes after being directly threatened. Of course, they had to take shelter here. They are entire families with their women, men, children, and disabled. All of them being here were taken as targets, and clearly the center of this part was chosen. The missile landed in the middle of this area. Everyone who was here died. Now, the civil defense situation is obviously difficult. The DC services can be stopped at any moment. If we run out of gasoline or fuel, we don't have the capacity to continue. Our cars, our equipment all use fuel, and if the sectors that provide vaccine service in this Gaza Strip do not have it, it will be a catastrophe up to the level of the Ministry of Health. Without fuel, the hospital will not be able to receive more wounded. In this case, we would be talking about collective death and genocide in the Gaza Strip.
Hundreds of people could be trapped under rubble in the Gaza Strip due to Israeli bombardment that began 13 days ago. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OSHA, warned on Thursday that this consumption of bodies under collapsed building is a growing humanitarian and environmental concern. The organization said in its latest report on the situation in the coastal enclave home to 2.3 million Palestinians. OSHA denounced that rescue teams, especially from the Palestinian Civil Defense, are struggling to carry out their mission and continue airstrikes as severe shortages of fuel for the vehicles and equipment and limited or not access to mobile networks. Russia on Thursday sent 27 tons of humanitarian aid for civilians in the Gaza Strip to be transported from Egypt, Moscow Emergency Situation Ministry said. Russian Vice Minister Ilya Denisov indicated in a statement that a special plane has already deployed near Moscow bound for El Arish in Egypt, and that the Russian humanitarian aid will be bound over the Egyptian Red Crescent to be sent to the Gaza Strip.
By order of the President and Government of the Russian Federation, humanitarian aid will be delivered to the population of the Gaza Strip. Russian Emergency Ministry aircraft will deliver a total of 27 tons of food. The humanitarian aid will be handed over to representatives of the Red Crescent in the area of delivery to the population of the Gaza Strip.
Let's take our last break, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, where you'll be able to watch an interviews, top stories, special broadcasts, and more. Hit the subscribe button and active the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. One final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. On Thursday, Grenadian celebrates commemorative events on the first National Day of the Heroes in memory of the 1983 assassination of former Premier Mauricio Bishop, several of his cabinet colleagues, and civilians. Local authorities declared a public holiday and organized several activities of reflection and remembrance of their heroes and martyrs in the 40th anniversary of the murder of the country's first left-wing prime minister, victim of counter-revolutionary movements that perpetrate a coup d'etat orchestrated and financed by the U.S. On October 25th, just 6 days after the killing of Bishop, U.S. troops invaded the Caribbean nation. More than 780 Cubans, including doctors, builders, and other professions, were in cooperation with Grenada at the time of the U.S. invasion. Grenada suffered 45 military deaths and also at least 24 civilians, along with 358 wounded soldiers. Cuba had 25 killed in action, with 59 wounded and 638 taken prisoners. In a ceremony on Thursday, as part of the commemorations of the first National Day of the Heroes, La Chile Grenada, cousin of Maurice Bishop, spoke on behalf of his family and the Grenadians who worshipped the martyrs who lost their life in the assassination of the Prime Minister on October 19.
The Grenada Revolution was a people's revolution. Maurice was firm in his conviction that, and I quote, "the people constitute the first great and indispensable pillar of the revolution." It was for this very reason that on October 19, 1983, 20,000 people, 1/5 of Grenada's population, shut down schools, government offices, and businesses, and poured into the streets of St. George's by the carloads, busloads, and truckloads to free their beloved leader from house arrest.
In the framework of the first day of the National Heroes of Grenada and the commemoration of the 18th of October, Don Rojas, former Prime Minister of Information, expressed his deepest condolence for the martyrs who lost their lives in the events that took the life of the former Prime Minister Maurice Bishop.
Today, my heart is filled with sadness. My mind is overwhelmed painful memories of that fateful day 40 years ago. A day that shook Grenada and the Caribbean to its very core. A day whose infamy will be remembered for generations to come. For me, the importance of this day is particularly personal and emotional, in that it is the day that 44 years ago to be precise, my boyhood friend and my leader, Maurice Bishop, whom I loved and respected, was gunned down like an animal, assassinated in the prime of his life at 39 years old.
The words of David Abdullah, a personal friend of Maurice Bishop from Trinidad and Tobago, were also heard at the tribute to the Grenadian leader.
As a friend and comrade of a number of those who were assassinated on October 19, 1983, and a friend and comrade of the revolution, we stood, many of us in Trinidad and Tobago and the Oilfields Workers Trade Union, and the Progressive Trade Union movement, of which I was a leader at the time, in solidarity with the revolution, and even before, in solidarity with Maurice and others in their struggles to bring about a better Grenada.
On Thursday, at the opening of the plenary session of the International Sport Forum Russia Council of Board, which is being held in the city of Russian President Vladimir Putin accused the International Olympic Committee, IOC, of banning the participation of Russian athletes for political reasons. President Putin stressed that it is ethnic discrimination that Russian and Belarusian athletes are banned from competing under the national flag at the Olympic Games in Paris 2024. The International Olympic Committee suspended the Russian National Olympic Body last week, claiming that Moscow violates the territorial integrity of Ukrainian athletes.
Thanks to some heads of the Modern International Olympic Committee, we found out that an invitation to the game is not an unconditional right for the best athlete, but some kind of privilege, and you can get it now on sport results, but by some political gesture that don't have anything to do with sports.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on X, and on Instagram as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.